If you need a bottle of beer, well, here's one for you. This is a restaurant display with the Natural Light beer, and it's 4 feet tall.
Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go.
Hey everybody, it's George the Antique Nomad, and this is day 2 of the Petoskey Antique Show in Michigan, the first show that we've had since the lockdown. And we're very glad to be here. It's been a lot of fun. It's been well attended and sales have been good, and it's really nice to be doing this again. Everyone's been really scrupulous about trying to keep everybody safe, so it makes me think that we can do this and be okay in the future. I'm going to show you my booth. You'll recognize some things perhaps, and there's definitely some fresh stock as well. I've got a table full of jewelry. I'll zero in here real quickly on this little girl that I got when I was with the gang of YouTubers shopping. Cute little pincushion with the Dayglow paint from about 1970. Kind of an interesting juxtaposition next to my Satsuma ware and the big bronze ikebana pot. But I like mixing things up and making them interesting. I need to show on the right, this is Erphila, and Erphila was a gentleman from Philadelphia, thus the Phila. This is supposed to be Madame Pompadour. These dresser jars, it says dresser dolls, Germany, and the top is removable so you can put your keepsakes, jewelry, powder, whatever in there. These were very popular in the 1920s. I also want to show this again. I showed this in a recent haul video, and I misinformed everybody that this was Maxfield Parrish, and a viewer of ours reminded me that this is actually R. Atkinson Fox, that Parrish didn't do the one with the babies. I misread the label on the back and thought it said Parrish, which I thought seemed odd because I had remembered this being Fox. That's what you get when you don't do your research all the way. So I wanted to come clean and tell you all that I made a mistake because I'm trying to help all of you learn more. So this is R. Atkinson Fox, dated 1925, printed in Chicago. Fox was a Canadian, and he did a lot of work in Parrish's style also. Pulling out here we have the Fenton blue lamp, which I think is rather pretty, and some nice 50s era brocades. I have some Native American that I haven't had out before, these collections of points and arrowheads, or something a little different, along with some Skookum dolls. That guy's got his hair down. Some neat beaded moccasins. I believe these are various Great Plains tribes from the mid-20th century, along with this beaded bag here. The beadwork is really quite desirable now. People really like that look, and it was so much effort. So it's nice that people are recognizing that. Then we have a school wall map. These are popular now too. I just sold one that had South America as one continent. This one has 4 versions of South America, showing different things that they do there, climates and transportation and economic things. 2 stacking bookcases. I showed you the wooden one as I was preparing for the show, and then this is a metal one that was U.S. Army surplus. And they're great because each layer comes apart, so I can take them in the car and bring them to shows like this. This lamp here is stained glass chunks, and this was a California designer from the 1950s. These little lamps hung in a lot of porches. We've got the Speedy swag lamp from the 60s, and then next to it, this is Purelator, but it's signed Bill Elliott, and it's signed by he and all of his crew. You've got Dan Elliott, you have his wife's signature, Cindy, on there, and a whole bunch of other people who worked with him. For the race car fans, this is a pretty cool piece because all of those signatures are really notable to people. And we have this guy. I've shown him, I believe, in another video. He is pre-Columbian, and he's had restoration, but this is 1,000 years old. It's really cool to see something as old as that. And we've got this cool thermometer, very colorful. Tom's peanut butter. And behind we have this washette.
That's from the 1930s or 40s. It was a little girl's toy. Thought that was great fun. I brought some metlocks and the candlestick holders. These are good to know because people pass these by because they don't realize that this is Franciscan starburst. It's the one piece in the line they didn't have enough room to put the pattern on. So these are actually rather valuable, somewhere in the 100, 125 range. And they're kind of a sleeper. You will occasionally see these because dealers assume that it must not be starburst because it doesn't have the starburst pattern, but that is in fact starburst. And then this is a neat piece here. This is the Britons. They made the lead soldiers in England, but this is the set that was done for Queen Elizabeth's coronation. And they show the Royal Carriage. There's the Queen inside there. And if you turn it around, you will see the Archbishop of Canterbury in there. Because the Queen is the head of the Anglican Church, part of the coronation is a very odd ceremony. If you ever look at the old black and white footage, they basically take her into a tent and there's a brief religious ritual in the middle where she is consecrated as the head of the Anglican Church. And that was done in the middle of the ceremony, in private, inside this tent, where no one could see what was going on. It's very odd to those of us who are not from England, but it is part of the tradition. This green Wedgwood set is a complete Demitasse teapot cream and sugar set. The green color was a 1960s color. It was originally one of his earliest colors from the early 1800s, but they then reissued this in the 1960s because their 200th anniversary was 1959, so they brought back some of the old colors and added some new ones. These are various prince and princess figures. You have Cinderella on the left and the prince in the middle, and then the Snow Queen on the right. These were all done by Lenox about 35 years ago, and they're rather collectible. So it's a very odd assortment, I guess, in a sense, but I just really enjoy bringing a lot of interesting things, and I have to say the response has been very good. I've had a good show so far, and that's been really rewarding after having been on hiatus since March.
I'd like to show you some things out in the tents today because I didn't really get to show a lot of that. I'm in an area where there's a bunch of large tents, but first I'm going to stop quickly and show you these pieces. This is Vernon ware. Vernon Kilns was another one of the big 5 California pottery companies back in the mid-20th century. This pattern is gingham. They did different stripes like this, and one's called tam o'shanter. The one that's the butterscotch and brown is called organdy. It was very popular in its time. All of those are hand painted, and the prices have come down on these. It's really a very fun area to collect because it's bright and happy. The serving bowl on the right is only $8, and the rim soups, I believe the one I just picked up was $6 each. There was a time they would have sold for double that. So again, if you like dinnerware, if it's not an ultra-modern pattern, the prices are a lot better than they used to be, and it's a great time to be collecting, and there are still customers. So here's the rows of tents out in the field.
And my neighbors have some neat stuff too. I wanted to show these great metal chairs from about 1950. They are in good shape. They look like they'd actually be comfortable because they're shaped for the body, or at least your butt. And they have a little bit of surface rust, but they're solid. And people like a little bit of wear to feel authentic these days. People don't necessarily want you to repaint everything. This sweet little gal with the kerchief is cute. And we see this table full of corbels and other architectural pieces. These are priced at $3.35 for the pair. Corbels are very desirable now. I know that Misty from Thrifter Hunter Vintage Junker is a fan of them and gets some neat ones sometimes. And a lot of people are using these in architecture or just in displays like you see here. The way that he's displayed everything, I think, is really neat. He gets a lot of nice worn paint items, and then I like the planter in the middle. He's got these old doors. These are barn finds, so this is not faked, and you'll notice the difference. This is what it looks like when paint really ages on its own. So this is a fun display, and he's done very well. I would say he's sold a third of what he had this morning. My friend Susan has this really great scale I needed to show you. I've shown balance and computing scales and various things. This is a computing scale because it would tell the weight and then tell you the price based on the price what this stuff was worth. This is a really neat piece. It's in good condition. It's a great color. Now, I saw one of these on Storage Wars recently, and they pretended that it was worth $1,500. Well, it's a neat thing, but I'm sorry, they don't go for that much. But they do go for several hundred, and it's because of the color. The color is just great. This would have been a popular color combination in the 1930s. This gal's a long way from home, and I thought that she deserved to be shown. She's a very cute bathing beauty pennant, felt pennant from the 1940s, I would say, because she's not wearing a bikini, and bikinis didn't come out until 1948, so that's really cool. She's on sale for $25. That is not a bad price. If it was in Florida, it would sell immediately for that.
Here's a bunch of neat old cocktail shakers, and I find that there's a lot of call for barware these days. This is sure a cute gal. Old uniform sign for nurses, and I would say from the way she's dressed that that's probably going to be 1930s or 40s, especially with red, white, and blue, although those would have been typical uniform colors at any time, I guess. It's double-sided and it has crack allure, and so it definitely shows its age. It's very cute. I don't see a price on this, but I have to say, oh yes, I do. Okay, it actually hung on a flange outside of a uniform shop, and it looks like it's priced over $1,000. But anything medical related tends to do very well because doctors have money and nurses are generally more and more well paid these days because they have to be. We need them. Well, equal time here. Not every lawn jockey is the representation of George Washington's footmen. This one came from a Kentucky horse farm and it was painted in the colors of the horse farm. You can see it's priced at $2,700. May seem like a lot, but this is a one-of-a-kind item in that regard. And this is a beautiful architectural piece. This came from a salvage outside of Birmingham, Alabama. This is going to be late Victorian. And look at the beautiful ironwork. The helmeted heads on each side. Really incredible detail in this. We see a lot of this sort of thing in the historic districts in Louisville and other southern towns. You don't see them a whole lot outside, although I guess in New England and New York and places that were more developed in that area, you'll find them on occasion too. But seeing one for sale at an antique show is really unusual. This dealer happens to specialize in garden items, as you can see in the background there. And collecting for gardens is very popular again. People really like objects in gardens these days in a way that they haven't for a long time. If I'm reading right, this is priced at $600, which to me seems like a pretty phenomenal price for something so grand. In the little town I'm in Kentucky, one of the neighbors has this exact same gate in front of their house, in front of a house built right around 1900. It's got the badge in the middle that says Stewart Iron Works, Cincinnati, Ohio. Somehow this gate and its supports made its way to a store in Palm Beach, Florida, and has come here now to Michigan for this show. But we really see these more along the Ohio River. There are quite a number of dealers out here. Overall, I'd say there's 150 to 200 dealers in this show, and a lot of them aren't open yet, but I'll be able to walk through some for you. You see the old radio crate there. Another gate. This is fun. There's people who buy these for scrapbooking now. Various sign, marker, and letter set displays. They'll sell anywhere from about 15 to 20 for a little child-sized ones to about 75, which is what they have on this one. Then in here we have this very nicely carved Victorian chair. This looks like the sort of thing that would have been something you'd sit in for a photo. like the ram's heads. This old Techron clock, this would have been a school clock in an oak case, priced around $150. On top is one of these 1950s exotic looking birds. I think it's supposed to be a pheasant or something. And they have a very heavy weight and this sort of speckling on them. Splash-proof buttermilk feeder and poultry fountain for your chickens. Strictly acid-proof. That was important. You have to be really careful what chickens get in their diet. I've been researching chickens because I've been considering getting some. This box here is neat because it's got the old Michigan State Police logo on the front of it. A plain box that was used by an interesting organization of some sort will be worth a lot more if it has their information on it like this, because people want it for the graphics, and it makes it cross-collectible. It's not just something to use. It turns into something that's collectible because, for example, I like police-related memorabilia. And here we have what they said is the police camera. So apparently that's what this was being used for, was the police photos. That's a Mamiya Flex, a twin lens reflex from about 1950, priced at about $125, and that's about the right price for that particular camera. 1950s Pepsi sign. And then the vegetable packets, these displays from the old hardware and nurseries, are definitely collectible as well. There isn't a ton of jewelry at this show, but this dealer has some great Navajo pieces. Look at the big conchos with all these belts with the turquoise centers particularly are going to be desirable. I see prices in the $700 to $900 range for a lot of these. And of course, if they're marked with the name of a maker, that can make them more valuable. But also if they're old pawn, meaning things that were traded, usually old pawn dates back before the middle of the 20th century. And then there's some squash blossom here. Looks like they had a sale because I see a big gap in the middle. And then there's the hollow silver beads. A lot of people like this look. They're very wearable. The one on the left here is a squash blossom with coral. Squash blossoms really are these trumpet-shaped flowers, but the general name for these is squash blossom. The other thing that this dealer does is she takes original Hudson Bay and probably Pendleton blankets, and she makes them into these beautiful coats. You can tell it's Hudson Bay. It's got the points here. You can see it had 3. And she uses authentic vintage buttons with the Southwestern style. Here is the Hudson Bay blanket label on the piece. And she takes ones that have a little bit of damage or are threadbare in places and would not have a life otherwise, and she makes them into all these beautiful coats. Look at all of the design. They're just gorgeous. And obviously very warm. She's based in Missouri. She does the show here in Petoskey and other shows in the St. Louis area. And her name is Pam Bauer. I'm going to show her label here, because this might be something, if you like and this is your style, you may want to be in touch with her. I have not run into her or these pieces before, but I think they're just beautiful. Firefighter related collectibles are definitely desirable. This one is Bureau of Forestry and it's for the warden. It's priced at $350, but these things are getting expensive now because everybody loves them. Here's a neat woven bed. This looks like a mid-century weave, even though it's more to the primitive. They also have a neat storage bin here that could also be used as a table. You see a lot of these farm tables that were made in the Midwest. This is priced at $375. Primitives are very popular in this part of the country and actually in a lot of places now. If you need a bottle of beer, well, here's one for you. This is a restaurant display with the Natural Light beer. It's priced at $185 and it's 4 feet tall. I wanted to show this big rendering pot. This is one of the largest ones I've ever seen. And it's got the tripod and it's priced at $295. I have to say I've gotten more money for that in a smaller size. Big old wheels here. Steel wheels priced at $150 for the pair. Great big propeller. These wooden propellers coming off of planes are used in a lot of decorating these days. It's a really cool look for a man cave. And of course, the burl table that it's on is another great looking piece. And I like the carved owl too. This isn't Whitco. It doesn't have the deep carving of a Whitco piece, nor does it have the burned wood effect. But it would have been something someone probably did at home on their own in the same period. And it's very cute. Lots of furniture at this show. And then we have this fellow. He has a lot of taxidermy related pieces, and this table I think is rather phenomenal. Look at the way he uses the antlers and the burl together on that. He is Northern Lights antler art, and I'll show his information here because he's out of Michigan here, and I've got to say he did a beautiful job on this. Look at the great burl in that with the points on the edge. Also has a selection of taxidermy. Taxidermy is very popular again, and one thing I need to show you on the other side of the booth after we go past some moose antlers and things here is he's got a really amazing moose. He's also got a mirror I'm going to stop and show you just for something different as well. This is David Marshall. David Marshall's signed mirrors were done in the 1980s. I believe they were out of the St. Louis area. And these were done, I've had a few of them myself, the smaller shell mirror, but this big wall mirror with the calla lilies is definitely a 1980s motif where it has that geometry that's sort of a Deco revival inspired. David Marshall mirrors are starting to be very collectible, and you'll see the signature down here. These pieces generally are signed, but isn't that a cool piece? And now we're going to see Mr. Moose. I've sold a few moose before in my time, but this one is giant. And he's in really great shape. Here's something fun in the realm of folk art. It was done as a Noah's Ark. They probably had a bunch of little animal figures, but this is something some guy made for a child out of his garage, and here's wainscoting used to do it. It's really cute. It looks like something that would have been done about the 1950s. I see a lot of doll houses made in a similar manner from that time. Below we have an old red paint bentwood New England basket, and we can see that it's got age because the top is done like a firkin where they have the triangular point on the end of the piece of bentwood. New England baskets are particularly popular, especially Nantucket. I have a long way to go in terms of knowing what I should know about those, but I do know that if you see an old basket and it looks different than the norm, that's the time you want to start doing your research. And then here is a firkin and some nice cheese boxes. Steeler also has some really good crocks. I like the slipware here on the number 4. You typically see that sort of design in 19th century crocks rather than 20th century. The Red Wing is going to be early 20th, the number 3 jug there. This one is going to be more desirable here because it's advertising a business in Detroit. And this is going to be from Detroit right when the auto industry is just starting. So Detroit was a much smaller place then. In terms of slipware, this one has the bee sting pattern. You'll see it looks like a bee with a stinger coming out of the bottom, hence the name. And this one has dragonfly. As much as you don't see a lot of bee sting, I rarely see dragonfly. I actually think that one is the scarcer of the two. And these both date to the mid-1800s. People who are seriously into Crocs look for these types of Crocs actually more than they look for the 20th century versions.
So while I'm thinking of it, please comment in the space below here and also hit the thumbs up button to like this video. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button below. Also hit the bell below to be notified of new videos coming every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And thank you so much for following along. Let's go back to this video.
Well, it's been painted millennial pink at some point, but this is an old Ideal double sink, and these would have originally had a lid. A lot of people are using these as bar coolers now. I had one that I got last year and I sold it for about the price on this one, which is $149. Nice old metal park bench. Again, here's some true old paint on furniture. Not faked at all. This sat in somebody's house for a long time and probably somebody's barn as well. And you'll see more of this here in the Midwest. This is the look that people on the West Coast are trying to do fake to look like this sort of thing because they don't see as much of it. This is the part of the country to come to if you are interested in this sort of thing. This is a neat old Parnell truck scale, as they called it. Basically a big old moving device. It says patented. This would be from sometime around the 1890s. You can tell that it has age, even though it's been cleaned up a bit. Partly because, see where the join is here, and it's sticking out beyond the surface. That's because wood shrinks along its grain. So whenever you have pegging of any sort, you're going to see where things are going to start to stick out a little bit more with age because the wood shrinks, and so pegs and such will start to stand out. And the reason they called it a scale is because it actually is an elevator scale. So you could actually weigh things on this as well as moving them. It would make a fun coffee table. More neat old drawers, country cabinetry. This one I think is really cool. This old piece, and it is older, again was handmade, and part of the reason we can tell that is because look at the face on this drawer. They used what they could get. In this case, they used the end of a box. You can see Continental Tobacco Company printed in it, and it's put in upside down because this was something that somebody just made to use. You can tell by the Eastlake, American Eastlake style of the handles that this would date to about 1880. They did some nice adornments to make it a little bit fancier, and then they painted it a color so that you wouldn't see that they used whatever wood they could find. And that's what's appealing about these things to primitives. This one's priced at $6.95, and a lot of the appeal is the fact that no one else will ever have a piece like this. It is one of a kind. This dealer has some cute stuff. Everyone likes swung vases. Well, here's the early carnival glass version thereof. You've got a diamond point and the Fenton pole in the middle, and then just the reeded on the right side. I like this Art Deco light fixture. It's only $22. If you were restoring a 1930s house, that would be a cute piece to have. Wanted to show these. The rooster on the right is Viking glass, and the rooster is probably the most collectible of their animal figures. That's why it's priced at $75. On the left is the Hull, H-U-L-L, pottery giraffe from the 1950s. You don't see the giraffe too often. He's cute. Some old cigarette thermometers priced in the $60 to $75 range, which is about the going rate these days. Now here's something to look for in old signs. If you see them with the reflectors, these are an earlier vintage. The reflector signs are something that pop up really in the 1930s and 40s and start to be removed in the 60s when they start being able to do reflectorization in the metalwork itself. Any old sign with reflectors on it is going to be significantly more desirable than a later sign to collectors. This one's priced at $375. That's full value for someone who really wants to have it in their house, but it will sell to somebody eventually for that price because they're hard to find. This is also hard to find because it's 7-Up, but it's made of paper mache. So not many of these coolers lasted. That's $47. That's going to date to the 1950s. Old potato chip clock is $85. That's about starting rate for electronic ad clocks these days. It's going to date to 1960s. And then a bunch of cool little lunch boxes. How many of you remember Walt Disney World, or Strawberry Shortcake, or the Mickey Mouse Club? These are all going to be 1970s vintage. They're all metal. Oh, I have a friend who would love this one because she is a Muppet fan to this day. Loved them in childhood, never got over it. I mean, Miss Piggy was pretty great. I really enjoyed the old Laugh-In show in reruns. I didn't remember it as a child because it was before my time, but all the corny jokes. And then on the back, of course, "Sock it to me." We always wondered what Artie Johnson was smoking. And there's Goldie Hawn at a very young age. It's funny, she played this ditzy, certain stereotype of a blonde on that show. And then it turned out that she was actually a pretty good actress and became very famous. She did the movie Cactus Flower in 1970 and got discovered. Some other cool 60s era stuff, the Audition 4-speaker radio with AM and FM. We didn't used to sell these radios well, but now people are interested in them because they get FM stations, and the old ones only got AM, and so that really actually has made them more attractive to people. And there's this fun light bulb lamp from the 70s. I vaguely remember these being around as a kid. Here's something I haven't seen before. Disco champagne cola soda, and this is a tin can, so this is from the early days of disco because this is before cans changed over to aluminum in the late 1970s. This was made in New Jersey under some sort of license. He looks like a guitarist rather than a disco guy, but she's definitely dancing. Here's a really cool Spider-Man display from a store. It's got a little bit of wear. I would say that this is probably 1970s or 80s. Priced at $7.50. I mean, I've never seen another one. And this fox has been captured in all his glory for all time and is priced at $2.25. Here's something unusual we don't see a whole lot. This is another style of folk art. It's button art. People would save buttons or take grandma's buttons. You can see the date 1940 in the middle of it. So this would have been done as a remembrance, and there's some good old Victorian buttons in there. Buttons themselves can be rather collectible depending on what they are. There's some that are painted in portraits that go back a few hundred years that can be worth hundreds of dollars and maybe even in the thousands. But this one is just a really fun collection that somebody preserved in this manner, and it makes a really cool and again unique wall hanging. I'm noticing a lot of one-of-a-kind things at this show, a lot of folk art and things that are fun to decorate with because if you have one, you'll have the only one, not something from IKEA. And then because we're far up north, we see snowmobiles on signs. That's pretty cool too. This one looks like 1960s probably because it's crackled with age. It's priced at $2.20. I don't see snowmobile signs very much, so I don't really know what the market for those are. They're not open yet, so that's why caution tape. But look at the cute little size of this Formica utility table priced at $65. That should be a pretty easy sell. It's got great legs, and people like Formica because it's easy to deal with, and people always can find room for a small table like this. Easier to sell than big furniture, frankly. And speaking of, good morning, how are you?
Pretty good.
Speaking of enamel top tables, this is really cute out of the 1930s. Look at the children's design on there. This is also priced at $65 with the 2 chairs, which to me seems like a really good price. They can learn to count, they can watch the circus go by. There's children with geese and bunnies. This would have been in a little girl's room. Just adorable. A lot of people do buy these now for their kids today, and that enameling on the top is fired on, so you don't really have to worry about lead paint with those. Oh, and look, they have another one here. This one's $45. A little less graphic in the design, but again, very sweet. Here's a Murano glass bird that I want to show you folks, because he's got a great beak and a great color. He's going to be 1960s. You don't see these with labels and tags too often, but they do sometimes have those marks. Now, there were birds like this made in Mexico around the same time, but the Mexican ones tend to have little bubbles in them. They're just not as pure, whereas the Italians were very good about separating their colors, and the clarity of the glass is better. This is priced at $75, and that's not a bad price these days. If you like these sorts of figures, the Italian birds are actually less expensive than a lot of the American factory-made ones, and this was all handwork done in the studio. Tiki glasses are popular, and these we know are actually from about 1970 because they've got the original box. Sykeston Creations in Mayfield, Kentucky. That's not far from where I spend time. It's funny to think that tiki glasses were made in Kentucky, but they were. And here it says Tiki Leilani. Kentucky actually surprises me. Disco balls were made in Kentucky, still are, I believe, actually. A lot of things you wouldn't expect that are hip and cool came from places in the middle of the country that you wouldn't associate that with. And here's a neat shaving mirror and stand. These would have been in just about every house around 1910. If you were shaving your face at home and not going to the barber, you'd have something like this. And they'd have the little mirror, they'd have a place for your cup, and then the shaving brush would actually clip in here. I'm not going to force it. This one, they've got the mug, even with the mug soap in the bottom of it. And this particular mug shows a fisherman. A lot of the shaving mugs were occupational, meaning that they would be indicative of what the person did for a living. And a lot of times, if you went to the same barber all the time, you'd have a shaving mug with your name or your occupation on it, and they would just leave it on the shelf, and every time you came in, that was your mug. That was their way of making sure things were sanitary back then. Here's another Shawnee smiley. This one is the smiley pig. And of course, the classic elephant picture next to it. You have a good show. I'll try to come see you before we open if I get a chance.
Hey, I remember I told you about this last year.
This is by Lynn Ray Lowe. This is called Journey. She is a Jewish artist out of Florida, to my understanding. And the reason I bring that up is that this is not specifically Judaica, but a lot of her pieces are. Let's take a look and see what she said about this work when she did it. So she said, at this point in society's evolution, I feel we're searching for a sense of oneness that is greater than the individual. With the world becoming ever smaller under the expanding powerful eye of the electronic media, we need to have images that remind us of our own truth, our own power, and our own creativity. So she is known nationally, and I think that's a very interesting and poignant sentiment in these times. It's priced at $245, and for her work, that's about the right value for a piece this size. This dealer's got a neat set of old alarm clocks. A lot of these are Big Ben and related clocks from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. You'll see this one, West Clocks made the Big Ben. This one has the phosphorescent paint on the hand so that you can see it at night. This one's an earlier one, the West Clocks Sleep Meter. These all seem to price in the $30 to $45 range these days. You'll see one that says War Alarm that was done during the Second World War, and that also has the phosphorescent dial. Just a neat look. They make that nice mellow ticking sound, and they all ring very loudly. I used one for years in my house, and then the cell phone came along. But this was more fun. Another neat stand full of Crocs and feeders. I like the water cooler on the left with the stripes. And
This is another Red Wing piece when Red Wing Union stoneware. You can tell by the patent number this is from about 1930. And this was an automatic feeder for your chickens, and that was a great thing. It's sure saved people a lot of time. This one's also interesting because it's pure cider vinegar, so that was an advertising piece. And then the ovoid jug, which is the shape, O-V-O-I-D, is a southern piece, and they say it's early, and I believe it is. It appears to have a salt glaze. You can see the reflective nature and a little bit of spotting on the handle from the way that it was glazed. Here's some good advice from an old roadside cafe. Stop and eat chicken. We'd like to say that was from the first Colonel Sanders, but there's no way we can prove that. But that's really cool. My friend Pete has some neat barristers cabinets at this show, and this one I think is very well priced. It's $8.95, but it's different than most because it's got really nice leaded glass on the top. That always is a premium. And it's also interesting because it's got a little bit of a step back here so that you get larger books on the bottom, and it gives it a sturdier base. That makes these a little more desirable than the one I have, which is just a straight up and down where all the shelves are essentially the same. These are very handy because it's easy to move them. You can take each piece apart. You could even get this in a fairly small car. This is my friend Dave, and he is the fellow I did a big thing on advertising. And it was all his collection at the Palm Beach show. You can go back and see that video, and we really went into depth with the things he has because he gets amazing stuff. He's really into Victorian lithography and early 20th century. The mammoth jumbo tin is very desirable. Everybody likes peanut and peanut butter related things. And next to it you've got Lotus brand peanuts. Little tins are definitely something people like. If you saw Vintage and Vinyl on Trusty Huckster Mercantile's channel, they did a deep dive on typewriter ribbon tins. And here's a few right here. The Allied on the right I think is really neat with that deco graphic with the flying eagle. There are a lot of collectors for advertising things because they're almost all cross-collectible. If you like beer-related items, well, here's Breweriana. These are tip trays, and these would have been put at the table to put your tip back when things were paid for in coins. Advertising also includes political memorabilia and related items. There's General Douglas MacArthur. Some people like coffee items. I used to sell percolators to an espresso place that would put 1930s percolators around everywhere. They would have loved this scoop out of an old Golden Sun coffee tin. Then you get into Coca-Cola, and that's a whole collectible area in and of itself. Vintage Vinny is into Coca-Cola collectibles, so is Vintage and Vinyl. There's some other YouTubers who really love this stuff. I think it's neat. Boy Scout graphics. These are all blotters here. These were the things you would wipe your pen on between writing so that you didn't smear the ink on the page. All of these are going to be 1940s. You see the lovely lady there. So just a lot of really fun things in the advertising realm, and Dave really gets great stuff. He goes to the big advertising conventions. If you like this sort of thing, there are big conventions once or twice a year, dealers from all over the country who bring their very best. I talk a lot about designer garden furniture and patio furniture from the mid-20th century, but these grape and floral encrusted pieces are also very desirable now, and this is a really good selection. They've got a couple of plant stands. These are all in really great shape, and they don't look like they've actually been restored because I see evidence of a little bit of rust. A few of them may have been repainted, but a lot of them seem to be original condition. They're very solidly made. The big settee here is a lot harder to find. You see the two-seater a lot. You don't see this larger one often. And I'm not used to seeing these little side tables much either. It's really beautiful. Again, a lot of people are collecting for the garden these days.
I showed you Vernon's gingham pattern earlier. This one is tam o'shanter. This is all three of the colors. They also did a maroon and blue called calico that was very popular in its time and is very pretty. They said they have a whole set of this for $90. You will sometimes see these floating around by themselves, and because they're not marked, people don't always identify them. But these are the range size salt and peppers, and then here's the individual salt and pepper. I just always love how they put S and P in the top, and that's how you shook them. Very cute pattern. Red and white enamel is just so fun, and it's just so kitcheny, and it is actually still usable. On the upper right is a refrigerator dish. There's a double boiler on the second shelf and an old coffee percolator. And down on the bottom here is Arthurian. This is a complete set. This is priced at $69 with the Hawaiian flowers on it. These used to go for a lot less, and people have discovered them now. You want to look for rust. This one does have one little rust spot in the middle there, but it is a great pattern, and a lot of the Hawaiian decorators really like these, and that's why the prices have gone up. Well, this is a really neat crucifix here I should show you. The dealer was just telling me it's from the 1950s. It's from a Catholic woman's home in Cleveland, and it's Spanish in origin. It's marked El Sacramento Anominamato in a center cartouche, which we'll try to show you if we can find it. I'm not. I think that must be on the back. But it is just really beautiful. He also has a really great slag glass window here. Look at the design. Absolutely Art Nouveau. Beautiful colors. This is the sort of thing that you want to put in a new house as a central display and then decorate around. And then these are really great. These are mission style and have been made into gun holders or coat hook racks, and the deer hooves are very much of that time. He's also got a great little slant top bookshelf. These mission style pieces, I say mission style, but they're really arts and crafts is the polite term for it. They were called mission pejoratively at a time when people thought that they looked like things from the Spanish mission, but they were also implying that they were not fancy and not extravagant, which was their point. Nowadays people really love these, especially in areas where you have craftsman homes. People are putting this kind of furniture in because it matches the woodwork in a house. So he's got very handsome pieces, and they're priced well for what they are. I see prices around $195 on these shelves, and they're fully restored.
That spins around.
Yeah, if this was on and lit, it actually spins. This is Schlitz beer, and it's the Saturn lamp. And this would have been a 1960s piece that you would have had in a bar. It's priced at $135, and in working order, that's a pretty fair price for these. And next to it, I want to show something. I recognize this because this is Pacific Stoneware from Portland, Oregon. And if it wasn't double-sided, it would have a mark that said Bennett Welsh. Bennett Welsh was a pottery designer who bought an old crockery company in Portland in the 60s. And he wanted to keep the employees going, so he continued to make crockery, but then he also used the redware to do his studio lines, and these were called people lovers. They were various animals, and that's just really a cute one. They've gone up in price. We used to see these for $15 and $20, and now they're selling for significantly more. Well, like all shows, there's just more here than I can possibly show you at one time. I've got to go get open for day 2, and I'm very excited to be back doing shows. I'm going to don my mask, and we'll hope to have a lot of customers. We did well yesterday, and we're really glad to see people out again. We're all being as safe as we can, and I hope that if the show does occur near you in the near future, that you'll come out and support it, because we're all ready to get back on the saddle and get this business rolling again. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm George the Antique Nomad, every day on Periscope, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Not every day on Periscope, but I do Periscope from time to time. We'll see you again. Thanks now.
Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.